Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for, we're almost there. We're on the home stretch now. And to get us started, I would like to say just a little bit about Jeretha McKinley, who is our moderator for this panel. Jeretha McKinley is a specialist in perinatal health program management as an advocate for perinatal community health for Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities. She has led national initiatives with governmental, corporate, and nonprofit organizations. Additional areas of expertise are curriculum development for experiential and transformal learning, community-based participatory evaluation. Ms. McKinley also has a passion for equity and justice for community health workers and families, especially surrounding birth and lactation. As a wife, a mother of 3, and caregiver for her parents, Jeretha is known for her honesty, mentorship, and her beautiful smile.
Thank you, Kim. It's delightful to be on with all of my sisters for this lovely Queen Circle. And we enjoyed our first gathering, talking among each other. And I am delighted to moderate the time that we have together. So I'd just like to make a few brief introductions, and then the queens are going to introduce themselves. So although they have quite a few credentials, I'm not going to go through all of them today. I'll let them introduce themselves also as they like, but just so that you know that originally we have, as a panelist and one of our Queen Circle participants, UmmSalaamah Abdullah, and she's a certified nurse midwife. Her information is also in your documents on HOVA, and if you'd like to speak with her, you can go there to get more information. She'll be available as time goes on the app. Secondly, I'd like to introduce Dr. Michal Young, and her accolades are more than I could express in this short time, but needless to say, she's a board member at Rose and a very down-to-earth, loving and caring person who we look to often for expertise from a global health perspective, especially for our special needs infants and our breastfeeding programs. I'd like to introduce next Kathryn Hall-Trujillo, who is the founder of Birthing Project USA. Again, a longtime friend and a mentor for me in lots of ways. So I'm looking forward to her talking about her experiences and introducing herself. She's done a lot since founding the Birthing Project, and so I'm sure that you'll be able to hear a little bit about that experience. And last but not least, our fourth panelist is Dr. Kimarie Bugg, who you've been hearing from for the last 3 days, and no need to really introduce her. So I'm going to start out with a question similar to a previous speaker, with a question that you can answer in the chat. What's something that you remember that an elder or grandmother, something that she did with you, or something that she told you that has remained with you and is a beacon or a light for you in your life? So just a second to write those things down in the chat. Little pearl of wisdom, or and experience. Wow, it's a nice. Only boring people get bored. I love that. All right, so give me a few more. You keep typing. We love these stories. For me, as a practitioner of experiential learning, the most valuable expertise is lived experience. So not so much what's in the book or what someone else told you, but the experience that you've learned is the basis for expertise. So these stories are really, really important in the work that I do. And so if nothing else, that's what I'll be sharing today is the questions that then provide your answers. So I'm going to pass the mic on to Kathryn Hall-Trujillo, who will, in introducing herself, talk about some pearls of wisdom she'd like to pass on.
First pearl of wisdom is to unmute yourself. At my age, by the time I remember to do that, I've lost my train of thought. But I really want to just say what a special moment it is for me to be here. Thank you so much, Sister Bugg, for making this happen, for making this moment happen. People who know the Birthing Project know that we were the first ones out in 1988 or shortly thereafter, the first Black grassroots community-based maternal and child health organization to be funded. And we didn't exactly, at any way, shape, form, or fashion, know what we were doing, but we channeled Harriet Tubman a lot and basically said, we don't know where Canada is, but we got to get the hell up out of here. And so we just started our way, 10 women and 1 man, to get to this point where I'm looking at you and saying, oh my, what a journey it has been. And what I'm really thinking when I look at you is that I feel so confident that we never need to know all the details when we strike out. We need to know where we're going. And if we go long enough and focused enough and keep our eyes on where we're trying to go, that the next generation steps up to the plate. And that's what I'm seeing now. Listen to Fatima. I didn't have to say anything. That's my baby girl. She's part of our whole, the new professionals. What did I learn? I've learned that, the generation that comes after us, they got this. They got this. So I will say that it's been quite the journey from beginning where we are with the Birthing Project to now being in 13 countries. I consider Cuba my home because it's the best place on the planet for a Black baby to be born. And one of the things that we are doing now is implementing our USMCH maternal and child health collaboration that's based out of Charles Drew University. So you have to give a shout out for School of Medicine that's housed in Compton and Watts, serving South Central, but serving the world from South Central. And I'm being onboarded as an ambassador as we speak for a new UN organization that is setting the protocol for gender, human rights, internationally for the UN, but focusing on maternal and child health as the foundation. So look at how far we've come because we set out to where we wanted to be. We're not there yet, but we can do this. So that's who I am, and that's how I'm so related to you all, and just looking forward to this time today.
Thank you. And Dr. Young? Unmute yourself.
See what I meant about the mute?
I laughed when you said it, and I thought I would remember to do it. My name is Michal Young. I'm a neonatologist, associate professor of pediatrics at Howard University College of Medicine. Recently retired from clinical services in the neonatal intensive care unit here, and will take my time in retirement. I'm still teaching some courses inside the Department of Peds, but will allow me to continue to focus on breastfeeding education for parents and for physicians and healthcare providers. That really is my passion to do as I've come along in the field of medicine. I think that the fact that I had completed my fellowship in neonatology when my first child was born. And while my mother breastfed, and I was really going to breastfeed, and I did breastfeed, but I had learned nothing about breastfeeding in my entire training. It had not been discussed at all. And when I had to interrupt my feeding because I got a fever post-delivery for a short period of time, and my baby got fed formula in that time because we didn't have donor human milk at that point. The difference in my child when she got fed formula versus how she looked, acted, and responded as a fully breastfed baby was so profound that I knew that what we were feeding these babies in these bottles was basically poison. And I'm known to my students and residents for calling formula poison. They have improved formulations, that's true, based on human milk studies, but we have a long way to go. And there's no reason why our babies don't get breastfed more often for longer periods of time. And it's just, it's remarkable. I got to see both my grandsons were breastfed by their mothers. And one of my daughters had a problem with overwhelming letdown, and the baby kept coming off the breast. And in the training that I've had in Rose, I recognized that was what was wrong with that baby. And once we set him up, he just straddled the breast and just went on about his business. And I had an inkling of regret at that point, because I remember a time in internship, we had a mother who was breastfeeding and the baby kept pulling off and spitting up. She had a great letdown and too much milk, but nobody said, well, let's try putting the milk in a different container and see if it's the milk or if it's the process. Nothing. And I feel a sadness in my heart that person did not breastfeed her baby. Ended up on Prosobi. I remember it distinctly. He ended up on a soy formula, and he went on, but just that knowledge, we had just that knowledge. And so one of the things I want to do is see physicians and nurses do a better job. The medical schools need the information. The nursing schools need the information. And that's the next part of this Rose journey that Kim dragged me into.
So thank you all for that. So I'll now let Dr. Bugg introduce herself and give a short statement.
So I did unmute myself because I was focusing on that. So thank you so much. So I guess when I was a part of the Satcher Community Health Leadership Project, which really transformed so much of my thinking. in 2013, there was a man who came through there. They had all these leaders that came through that asked you different questions and to challenge you. And this is one of the things that really stayed on my mind when he asked, "Who are your people?" He went around and asked each one of us, "Who are your people?" And, we were like, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, no, I'm not going to give you the answer. When I ask you, "Who are your people?" What do you think? And so my mind immediately went to my paternal grandmother. And again, someone else had mentioned about their family, and my paternal grandmother finished 5th grade. And she was just the most brilliant woman that I can say I still know. She was a granny midwife in Arkansas, delivered about 300 babies. She went to the governor of Arkansas. My dad was like number 4, and he was born in 1929. But she went to the governor and discussed with him why granny midwives, or why midwives were important and vital, and why they needed to be helped, and why they needed to be able to work. And he said, okay. And she was just amazing. When I was 12, I would travel from Indiana to Arkansas, and she allowed me, when I was 12 years old, to help her. And my first helping her was, the mother came in, she walked, she squatted, she got on her hands and knees, and like 2 hours, she had a baby. And grandma fed her, and grandma handed me the baby, and I fell madly in love. And, she breastfed, and she got up and she went home. And I was like, wow, this was absolutely amazing. And my grandmother was absolutely amazing. And that's my people. That is what inspired me to do so much of everything that I do. And, again, that woman, just like Casey, I mentioned early, when she got up to go home, she made me get that baby back. And I still think about him. He's probably about 55 now. And I think about him often still. So that's who I am. I'm Sarah Saul's granddaughter.
It's a beautiful introduction. So what I'd like to do now is to pose another question for each of the panelists, but I'm going to begin with Dr. Young. So this panel is to not only provide information, but also opinions and perspective. So one of these questions that I'm asking is for you all to also be considering what questions you might have. So please put any questions you have about our perspectives or opinions in the chat. And also how you respond to what the elders are saying. How would you respond to this as someone who's listening to an elder speak? So Dr. Young, what concerns did you have, or do you have about, or information you'd like to share about breastfeeding and birth control?
Well, there is a natural process called lactational amenorrhea, Lamb method of birth control. And there's some rules with it. Exclusively breastfeeding. And that means exclusive, no water, no juice, no anything else, breastfeed. And they recommend that you can do that exclusively up to 6 months. After that point, when we start introducing solids and other things, it may not be as reliable in suppressing ovulation. And so you can put yourself at risk to some extent of getting pregnant again. So it has fallen out of grace, so to speak, in this country. And some people never hear about it, but the slave masters knew about it. And when the slaves that went to the West Indies, those slave masters told the ones in this country that you need to separate that woman from that baby, because if she stays with that infant, usually it's 18 to 24 months in between the pregnancies. And that if you want that slave to bear, she needs to not feed that long. So we know it's an effective method of birth control when it's allowed to happen. I am a believer of lamb. However, I think after we are so busy putting in oral contraceptives and Depo, but I really think there's a room for at least leave her alone for 6 weeks. Let her body bring back normally to her supposed way it functions with estrogens and progesterone and do those things. Let that 6-week period come in, and then perhaps if you used a low progesterone contraceptive, it would have less impact. What they don't talk about and what we can't do is we cannot predict which woman will be responsive to that contraceptive and have a drop in her milk supply and never recover it. And if they use a long acting like Depo and she's one of those, the milk supply is gone. But at least if they waited for 6 weeks, the baby would have at least that 6 weeks worth of milk supply. So I'm fighting with my OB colleagues all the time about this. I understand the concerns of short interval births. I understand the challenges mothers have to really birth that baby. That means the baby, every time the baby feeds, you're going to either be the one, or there may not be relief. People's situations are different. We haven't done the science to prove yet that expressing milk at work also has that same suppressive effect. It probably does, but nobody's started enough yet to do that study so that working women can prove that does do the suppression, and they can stay away from necessarily having to use hormonal contraceptives. There are IUDs. There are other methods, but people don't really talk about them. But that's one of my pet peeves. I saw Depo dry up one of my moms, preemie mom, pumping for her little baby, and it was gone. She had that Depo shot on Friday. Monday, she pumped all weekend, and it just kept going down, and it just disappeared. She was in complete tears, and nobody had said to her, this is a possibility. That's the problem. If you at least say that this could happen, women will weigh the thing. They said nothing. And she was, you talk about birth trauma? Yeah, that was a traumatic experience for her.
So our Queen Mother, Kathryn, also has a comment on this question. She's waving her hand wildly.
Unmute.
We need a young person to keep this.
Yeah, y'all just gonna have to bear with us, right?
So I got so excited because of what you said, and also because I saw Sister UmmSalaamah, because we can't have a queen circle without the midwife dress. I don't know where it started, but it got handed down to me. So, Sister, I have on the dress it's representing. But Dr. Young, one of the things that I was just fascinated about what you were saying is because I've been doing research in Cuba now for 20 years. And one of the things that happens in Cuba is that women breastfeed forever. They use breast milk for if you have an eye infection, an ear infection. Breast milk is considered good medicine, but it's also how you babysit the kids in your family. It's how you teach other women to breastfeed, by actually showing them how you do it or whatever. And all of those women don't have 12 children. And so I had actually forgotten that there was that conversation going on that we have to decide if we're going to breastfeed or if we're going to space our children. So I'm hoping that we get to talk later about our US Cuba MCH collaboration project that we're working on.
Great space. So Queen Mother UmmSalaamah, our new nurse midwife, who has traveled globally and has so much to share. And she's so busy that we are thankful she got a chance to get on with us today. So the question and introduction was just to say who you are and a topic that is important, a pearl of wisdom you'd like to share. If you can unmute yourself.
I was trying to, I'm sorry.
We've all done it.
I'm just walking in the door from a birth, so please forgive me. Where to even start? We were talking about, or they were talking about child spacing. Worldwide, breastfeeding is one of the best forms of child spacing. That's if you're not giving anything else. If you're not giving other food, you know, people want to introduce these babies to cereal and vegetables and meat at 6 months old, please. But if your body is totally supporting another life, then it won't drop an egg to make a new baby, because it's already taking care of you and a baby. So I think that we need to encourage our young mamas. When I was having babies, I'd be the only one in the hospital breastfeeding. I have to fight with people to get my baby. Bring my baby, give me my baby, because I know that if I got to boil bottles every day and make formula every day, this child is going to be in trouble. So, I mean, it's easy. It saves you a whole lot of wear and tear. It saves you money. Even if you're getting free formula in the beginning, by the time that child is 6 months old, that isn't enough. So it doesn't make sense. Even working mamas can nurse when they're home, because it's a supply and demand. And so if you don't want to pump while you're at work, well, if you quit nursing that time of day, you're going to quit making milk that time of day. It's not rocket science. So I always push it because it's easy.
I love the way you speak so simply and plainly. Everybody can understand. And that's always something I've admired about you. She always has a trail of children with her too, by the way. So that's another thing I always admired about her when she talks about her children. So let me ask this question before we go to a Q&A time. And I'm going to ask the other Rose team to help me with the questions. But before we go to the Q&A from the participants, I'm going to ask the team about how long did you breastfeed your children, just so we get a scope of that. So I'll start out. So the longest I breastfed was 3.5 years. And I'm going to ask Mama UmmSalaamah to go next.
Okay, so my oldest is 60 years old. And back then, I only breastfed long enough to where I didn't have to boil the bottles anymore. So like 3.5, 4 months was what I breastfed. I wish I knew then what I know now, but I'm just grateful that they got what they got.
Exactly. So that's kind of why I'm giving this perspective, so everybody gets a chance to see that there's much diversity in our breastfeeding community. So thank you so much for sharing. Kathryn?
Yes. So my first child was born in the late 60s when it was back to black. And it was more of a political statement than anything else, because we thought that when we grew our afros and we put on our ethnic clothes, that we were supposed to be breastfeeding. So I actually breastfed all three of mine. And it was always one of those, it was from that perspective. And like Mama UmmSalaamah, I breastfed as long as it was practical for me. And so all of them were breastfed. The max was probably about 6 months, because I didn't know about all of the support and I didn't know about all the whatever. But the thing was to be down with what was going on. You had to breastfeed for a little while at least.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. So I just have to say that when we tell our stories, it affirms other people's experience. So we don't ever have to feel uncomfortable or ashamed about our experience. I tell people all the time, my oldest was breastfed, even though I didn't birth him. His mother nursed him for about 3 or 4 months. So I'm grateful for that. And my next one, I nursed until he was 7 months old because of shame from my family and everybody saying all the things about around embarrassment. So when I tell my story about my last one, it's to encourage those people who are still doing it that long and hiding in the closet. So, so Dr. Young.
I breastfed my first child for 8.5 months, the second one for 13 months, and the boy, the last one, for 18 months. He would have breastfed until he went to first grade if it had been up to him. But and I soon learned later on that the average age of breastfeeding around the world of weaning is 4 years. And I've been, watching as time goes on. When I ask my medical students when babies should be weaned, they are all stunned at that time, because, the AAP kind of tells you, well, a year or as much as mother and baby want. But we don't get a lot of encouragement to go beyond a year in this country. So you all in a closet.
So look, we're gonna let the one who hasn't been in the closet but has done it the longest speak last. So Kim.
Okay, I was in the closet. So my first children were born in 1978, and I had moved away from my home in Indiana and moved to Texas, where I had absolutely no family. And my goal was to do that because I had so much family. They were always in my business. And then I suffered. So when I found out 11 days before they were born, there were 2 of them. In 1978, they didn't do a whole bunch of ultrasounds and all that stuff. And I was just graduating from nursing school, and the doctor thought I talked too much and thought I knew too much. And I kept telling them something wasn't right, because this child moves 24 hours a day. And I learned in nursing school they ain't supposed to move 24 hours a day. And they paid me no attention. So 11 days before, they found out there were 2 big heads in there. So I had my children, and I expected to breastfeed because I saw a lot of that growing up in Indiana, but I had absolutely no assistance. And that time, you had those phone numbers where everybody knew exactly where you lived. I lived on the side of the track with the people who looked like me. The only people I had to call was La Leche League. I called about 3 or 4 times. I never got a call back. So I did what I call token breastfeed. I put them to the breast, but they had everything else too, because again, like I said, I saw it growing up. I never talked to anybody about it. And then I'm away from everybody with no assistance. So I feel like I failed miserably, and that has always been a burden for me. And then that's when I decided I was going to learn as a pediatric nurse how to help the people that I worked for. So that's when I started reading and learning about breastfeeding. So my second set of twins, born in 1991, weaned on their 3rd birthday. We had a discussion and told them 3-year-olds don't nurse their mommy anymore. They agreed that on their 3rd birthday, they would wean, and it worked. And then the last one fed until he was 4, and still never got over the guilt that I felt about the first ones. And so that's what fueled so much of my passion.
So I know that I have some teammates working on looking at the questions. So if you would ask the questions, and if they're directed at a certain person on the panel, I'd appreciate that.
This is a question for everyone. How have you been able to support your children in their breastfeeding journey without crossing any boundaries?
Okay, I'll start. Because those of you who know me and know my children, people think that because they are my daughters, that they would actually be all into pregnancy and this whole thing. But my youngest child, who turned 50 this year, was the one who felt like her description of pregnancy was being overtaken by an alien who got to eat first. That would be Dr. Tamu. And so that is a really, really good question. And the whole thing about like telling women what to do. So now there's someone that's an expert telling you what to do in every aspect of your life that's in conflict with the way what midwives say about intuition. And this is your baby, and you have to rely on yourself to do most of the things that have to be done. And so and every person is different. And every person is different. But we have some family principles. And one of the principles is that you at least try to find a reason why you think this is good for you. And I'm going to say with the youngest one, I think that she was really influenced by the Morehouse research that it's better for mommy than baby to breastfeed. It's like, this is going to help me get healthier sooner. It's going to help me do these things, because I think in her mind, she really thought, well, there's a substitute for breastfeeding the baby, but there's not a substitute for me. And so I didn't go at it from a moral thing. I was just happy that she made a decision. And with Kenya, it was just woman to woman, almost an arm wrestle. Like, I expect you to do this. And she did, until the baby started teething on her nipple. And then I remember catching the baby as she threw it in the air one day. So that's real life family dynamics.
Anybody else like to answer that one? I especially was interested in the last portion of that question, without crossing any boundaries.
Right.
And if you'd like to answer that in terms of the Black community in relationship to boundaries around mothers and daughters, Mama UmmSalaamah may have something to contribute to that. And I see Michael is unmuted.
Mm-hmm. Well, when my daughters were growing up, a conversation came up that they would probably be breastfeeding. And the youngest one told the older, you better breastfeed, because if you don't, mama gonna take that baby and she'll breastfeed it. And that's when I realized that maybe I should be, you know, a little less pushy and see what they would do, because that was like hilarious to me that she figured that out, that I probably would want to push that boundary. But I was glad that she spoke up in that way, so I would know not to. Both of them breastfed their children though, and it worked out. But I think that checked me when she said that. It made me think about, you know, you have to let your children make their choices, that you give them the information, and everything, as Kathryn said, everything can be different, and you have to appreciate that. But I would have been impressed.
All right. UmmSalaamah.
Well, what I told my daughter was, you don't have to get up in the middle of the night with a hollering baby, hunting a bottle. Either it's too cold or it's too hot. You know, you don't have to boil bottles every day and make formula every day. It's just so much easier. All you have to do is roll over, and after a while, the baby can even undress you. I remember waking up with my clothes all hiked up. It was like, when did that happen? So I didn't make it like I was telling her what to do or insisting that she do it. You know, I just told her that it would be easier for her and one less thing to do. And new babies are a lot of work.
True.
Thanks. Is there another question?
There is. The next question is, what advice do you have for other elders on the importance on joining this conversation?
I'd like to start with that one. So one of the things that we're doing at Rose is developing this Queen Circle, because for grandparents, because there are so many grandparents that you know, breastfeeding sort of skipped that generation because, again, of where we have been with you know, with our jobs, and you know, with so many things. And so there's so many who do not understand, you know, the importance of breastfeeding and all those things. So we have decided that and grandmothers definitely want the best for their family. You know, when I had the twins, you know, my mother said, there's so much work. That's too hard for you to do. You know, you're my baby. You know, I don't want you to have to struggle like that, you know. And so to help them to understand that breastfeeding is important, and if this is what your daughter has chose to do, then, you know, the best thing for us to do, because of the importance, is to learn about it and help them. And again, it's about having the resources and the information. Again, they just a lot of times don't understand. And so to make sure that they know why it's important and how they can be helped, it has really been pretty amazing to do. So we are truly, truly working on that curriculum, and my sister Mary Jackson is the brainchild behind that, and she's online, and she's been doing a phenomenal job with that.
I think this is a really important question, because when we first started doing this, we weren't very kind to the generations who had not breastfed, in terms of the outcomes would be if you did not breastfeed, that you would have problems, your babies would have problems. And we did some work in New Orleans where, first of all, there were 3 generations of people who had never even seen anybody breastfeed. And when we thought about it, it could have been true. It's not on television, it's not on social media. It wasn't any way that you would literally have seen anyone. And when New Orleans realized that Black women were no longer going to wet nurse other babies, they abruptly just stopped your milk when your baby was born. It wasn't even up for discussion or anything like that. And so when that time happened, it happened just like that. But when we first started encouraging people to do it, we did this research with a group of nurses who were like actually teaching people to breastfeed, but actually felt like, well, I wasn't breastfed and I'm not retarded. I wasn't breastfed and I don't have these kind of issues, you know, with socializing or whatever. And so even though they were doing what they were supposed to be doing, they didn't actually believe it. And so the way that you're doing it, Dr. Kim, with actually making it a sister circle and giving women an opportunity to deal with it is a lot better than the way that we just, you know, brought in those generations that didn't do it and then made them feel bad that it didn't happen to them and they didn't do it with their own children.
So, as Kim mentioned, I live with my parents and our air conditioning is not working. So the person that's coming to do the air conditioning is here. So that's this is, as my pastor says, live church. So I apologize. So would anyone else like to address that one before we go on to our last?
I definitely would. This is UmmSalaamah. My daughter's mother-in-law told me that when she was a mother of 10, and when she had her children, the doctor told her that baby don't want them old bags. They also told her that chewing tobacco would keep you from getting tuberculosis. They discouraged breastfeeding, that it was old-fashioned and somehow not clean, and they made people not want to do it. And then you had to go and buy milk. It was pet milk and Karo syrup at that time. So if the person that's supposed to be the medical expert is telling you it's no longer scientific, that the canned milk is, you know, it came out the factory and they know what's in it and blah, 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 blah. And we were convinced that it wasn't healthy to breastfeed.
Exactly. So it's wonderful to be able to have a circle where you can discuss our experiences, as diverse as they may be. It feels good to get affirmation from folks. So basically, Kim gave her vision for the future of having these circles. What other visions do you see around the contributions that elders can make to lactation in the Black community? What other visions do you have around this? So if you just take 1 minute to give us your vision. And I see Michael's microphone is unmuted, so I'm going to start with her.
I guess my vision would be to see breastfeeding education as part of general education. It should be in the health education that young people get from elementary school through high school, and that is just, the breast is part of the body. These are some of the functions that the breast, the primary function for the breast and mammals, and so that boys and girls get taught that information. So it's not some kind of taboo that comes out of nowhere once you get breast and feelings on your chest and when you get older. That would be, because that's the basis for really talking about it. And then I'd also like for us to talk about how you manage or not manage to become this superwoman in order to give this nourishment to your children and to push for appropriate time off, maternal leave, family leave, that allows you to parent and breastfeed. That's my vision.
I'd love to follow up with you, Dr. Young, because my very, very favorite PSA in Cuba is one of, you see this picture of a little boy. It's a little boy, well, you can't, it looks, it's like you see something that looks like maybe a rose and it's opening up. And then you see something that looks like maybe a rose and it's coming toward the rose. And then as it gets closer, you realize that it's a nipple and that the first one is a little baby. And so you see the rose coming into the baby's mouth. But this is a children's PSA that's shown with kids as soon as they're big enough to watch TV or educational TV. And so the kids know that the nipple is coming to the mouth. And when it makes that, the kids know to go, and they clap and they love it. And so, you know, that's one of the things that you said, like, at what age do you begin to normalize this where it's not a grown-up conversation, it's a kid conversation, because those are the things that we learn early on. And my vision, especially being here today, is remembering that Sweet Honey in the Rock song, that, hey girl, you look a lot like me, but you're smarter and stronger than I'll ever be. Because, you know, from the questions that people are asking and the work that they're already doing, they got this. They got this. And they're going to figure out how to normalize it. So we'll have our kids going, yay! Our grandkids. Our grandkids.
Yeah, well, we think of them as all of our babies.
Yes, in my case, our great grandkids.
Unfortunately, Fatima has to be both of our babies. So yeah, like that. So Kim, UmmSalaamah, a vision or something that you'd like to see?
So we have been working for the last couple of years in many different arenas on working to develop a consortium of excellence in the historically Black university and colleges. And our vision goal for this, and we've written several grants, a couple of them are still out there. We have actually connected the 4 HBCU medical schools along with Xavier University and Jackson State University School of Public Health, with the understanding that, you know, in the literature, of course we know this, that when Black physicians care, for example, Black babies in the NICU, they have a, 2 times more percentage of surviving and thriving and getting well and going home sooner. The sort of for us, by us. So we know that they're not getting this education and information in the schools, but we're not just, throwing proposals out there to everyone. We're doing that also, but we've also started working with these institutions to institute some type of breastfeeding education. And right now, Jackson State is doing an interpersonal professional training that was developed by CHAMPS and one of our allies and us. Morehouse School of Medicine developed a community breastfeeding rotation, and we have someone in it every rotation. And we've had several generations who've kind of come through and have continued to move on. So we are really excited to keep pushing that forward, to train Black physicians and healthcare providers to know and manage lactation.
Thank you, Kim. And I've been informed we're at time, so I don't want to have people on too long and be too late. Just as a closing remark, if Anyone, if Mama UmmSalaamah would like to speak to her vision real quickly, we'll close out on that. Thank you all so much for the fabulous discussion. And we're going to be doing this together on our own without an audience. And I look forward to seeing you all again. Mama UmmSalaamah, would you like to close us out?
I'm frozen.
Well, we can hear you. Can you, you're frozen. We can hear you.
Okay. Where to begin? My vision is that we have community healthcare people in with us, among us, women that would have been the community midwife, or the women that are already respected and already ask for advice and already trusted within each and every community, who can then encourage things like breastfeeding and having a person be at peace when they have a baby, feeling cared for and loved even. We once had that, and I think we need that back. It's a part of what it takes to become a community, or to be a community.
Thank you. That's my heart too. Community midwives. Thank you all.
Blessings.
All right, now Star is going to come up and give